Hi guys, today we are going to talking about the clavicle. But before I get right into it, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Yes, so the clavicle is also known as small key in Latin. So as you can see, this structure looks like a key that you can use to unlock a door. So it's referred to as small key in Latin. It is a long bone. General characteristics of the clavicle. The clavicle is the only long bone that lies horizontal in the body, just like the way I've carried it. It's not lying vertically in the body, but lying horizontal. Other long bones include the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the tibia, the femur, the fibula. These are long bones and they lie vertically in the body. We also have short bones, and those ones are our carpal bones and then our tarsal bones. We have the sesamoid bones, e.g., our patella, and so on. We also have the flat bones. The flat bones are the skull bone. So this is our clavicle. It is a long bone and the only long bone that lies horizontal in the body. It is the only long bone that ossifies in membrane. So other long bone, they ossify in cartilage, and the ossification in cartilage undergoes two steps. It's first of all a membrane, then a cartilage, then bone. However, this clavicle ossifies in membrane. So from the membrane, it becomes the clavicle. It's also the only long bone that has two primary ossification centers. Usually, the long bones of the body have a single primary ossification center. However, the clavicle is the only long bone that has two primary ossification center. It is subcutaneous throughout its course. Whenever something is said to be subcutaneous, it implies that it is directly under the skin and it is palpable. So you can palpate it and it is directly related to the skin. So the clavicle is palpable and subcutaneous throughout its course, and it has no medullary cavity. So there is no medullary cavity in the clavicle, and in addition to all this, it is also pierced by the middle supraclavicular nerve. Now, that is all for the general characteristics of the clavicle. So the side determination of the clavicle. Whenever you're giving a bone, the first thing to always do is to side the bone to know whether it belongs to the right side or whether it belongs to the left side, or to know whether it is rightly placed anteriorly or posteriorly. Now, the side determination of the clavicle, the things I make use of are the parts of the clavicle. So the clavicle has two ends and a shaft, two surfaces also, or it also has surfaces that you can make reference to. So this is the lateral end, this is the medial end. How do you differentiate lateral from medial end? The lateral end is flat superior inferiorly, so from up downwards the lateral end is flat, while the medial end is quadrangular. As you can see, it's quadrangular in shape. Now it has lateral end and the medial end, and it also has a shaft. What is peculiar about this shaft? In the shaft, the normal anatomical position in the body, the medial portion of the shaft, the medial portion is convex anteriorly. So we can see this is convex. So if this was the anterior part of the body, this shaft region is convex anteriorly, the medial part, while the lateral part, as we can see, is concave anteriorly. So that's one of the side determination. The lateral end, the medial end, the shaft, the medial end is convex anteriorly, or the lateral end is concave anteriorly. So you can see this concave anteriorly for the lateral end, convex anteriorly for the medial end. Then apart from that, having identified the concave and the convex end, and we have identified the lateral and the medial end, the next thing to identify is the superior and the inferior border. So the inferior border is one that is a major one actually. So on the inferior border, close to the lateral end, this region, this is the lateral end, close to the lateral end, we have a ridge. So this ridge, this elevation, this is referred to as the trapezoid ridge. So we can see this elevation, trapezoid ridge, and we also have a tubercle, conoid tubercle. So this is the conoid tubercle, which is not really prominent here, but the trapezoid ridge and the conoid tubercle. Trapezoid ridge, conoid tubercle. So we have these two structures. We have these two structures that allows for the attachment of the trapezoid and the conoid part of the coracoclavicular ligament. We also have on its medial end, also on the inferior surface, an oval impression for costoclavicular ligament. So this impression that we can see here is an impression for the costoclavicular ligament. Then at the center inferior surface, we have this groove for subclavius muscle. So this groove that we can see, this depression here, the groove for subclavius muscle, as you can see. So this is our inferior surface, which has three things: the trapezoid ridge and the choanal tubercle for the coracoclavicular ligament, the subclavian groove for subclavius muscle, and the oval impression for costoclavicular ligament. So if we should place this medial end facing, this is anterior, this is posterior. So this is my posterior aspect, this is my anterior aspect. So the medial end facing medially, the lateral end facing laterally, lateral end facing lateral, medial end facing medially, then the anterior border of the shaft, the medial end of the shaft is convex anteriorly, and the lateral end of the shaft is concave anteriorly. So we should place this in the body, in the anatomical position. I'm trying to turn it so we can see. We can conclude that this is our right clavicle. Can we see? So medial end articulating with sternum, lateral end articulating with acromial process. The anterior part of the medial end of the shaft is convex, and the anterior part of the lateral part end of the shaft is concave. So that is the side determination of the clavicle. So the next thing to talk about in the clavicle is the part of the clavicle. So we have the lateral end, we have the medial end, we have the shaft. So it has three parts basically: the lateral end, the medial end, and the shaft. We already said our lateral end is flattened upward, downward, or superior, inferiorly. The medial end is quadrangular, as you can see. The medial end is quadrangular, and the shaft is somewhat S-shaped, so it is more like a curve. So now the lateral end, let's talk about the lateral end. The lateral end is also known as acromial end because it articulates with the acromial process of the scapula. So the lateral acromial end has a facet. So this is a facet that articulates with the acromial process. This is a facet that articulates with the acromial process of the scapula, and this facet articulates with that acromial process of scapula to form the acromioclavicular joint. Now let's go to the medial end. The medial end is also known as the sternal end. It is quadrangular in shape and articulates with the clavicular notch of the manubrium sterni. So this region articulates with the clavicular notch found on the manubrium sterni to form the sternoclavicular joint. So sternoclavicular joint on the medial end, acromioclavicular joint on the lateral end. Then we have the shaft. So the shaft is just the whole extent of the bone apart from the end. So the shaft is divided into two parts: the medial two-thirds and the lateral one-third. So if we should look at this in lengthwise, this region is more like two-thirds of the whole bone, and this region is just like one-third of the bone. So the lateral one-third and the medial two-thirds is the division of the shaft. Now the lateral one-third, which is here, it has two borders and two surfaces. So two borders. This is the border. This is one border, anterior border. This is another border, posterior border. And two surfaces. We have superior surface and we have inferior surface. So let's identify that: anterior border, posterior border, superior surface, and inferior surface. So those are the borders and surfaces of the lateral one third. On the inferior surface of the lateral one third, we already mentioned what was there before. It has a ridge and a tubercle. The ridge is the trapezoid ridge, and the tubercle is the choanoid tubercle. So it has a ridge and a tubercle. Trapezoid ridge, conoid tubercle for the attachment of the conoid and trapezoid part of the coracoclavicular ligament. Then we now have the medial end now. The medial end is rounded. The medial end of the shaft, or the medial two-thirds of the shaft, is rounded, and it has four surfaces. So the medial end has four surfaces. The anterior surface, this region, so the anterior surface is convex anteriorly. We have the posterior surface. The posterior surface is smooth, as you can see. This region is very smooth. It's very smooth. Then we have the superior surface and we have the inferior surface. The superior surface is rough in its medial part, and we have the inferior surface. The inferior surface has an oval impression for the costoclavicular ligament. So this is the oval impression for the costoclavicular ligament. Also on the shaft, this is the medial two-thirds. So the lateral half of the medial two-thirds, if this is divided into two equal halves, so this lateral half, also on the inferior surface, has an impression or a groove. So this depression is our subclavian groove, or the groove for subclavius muscle. So this impression is our subclavian groove or groove for subclavius muscle, and that's basically all for the part of the clavicle. Now let's go to attachment on the clavicle. Attachment of the clavicle. The lateral end at the margin of the articular of the acromioclavicular joint. So this lateral end at the margin of the acromioclavicular joint, it gives attachment for the joint capsule of the acromioclavicular joint. So at the lateral end, there is attachment for the joint capsule of acromioclavicular joint. On the medial end, we have attachment for the fibrous capsule surrounding the sternoclavicular joint. We also have interclavicular ligament. So if this is the placement, we have interclavicular ligament, and inter meaning between something. So interclavicular, between the two clavicles. So this, the interclavicular ligament connects with the clavicle of the other side and joins them together. So that's the function of interclavicular ligament. So we have the fibrous capsule of the sternoclavicular joint and the interclavicular ligaments. The fibrous capsule of sternoclavicular joint and interclavicular ligament. So now let's go to the lateral one third. The lateral one third anteriorly, it gives origin for the deltoid muscle. This is anterior. The anterior is concave anteriorly. So it gives attachment for the deltoid muscle, the origin of deltoid muscle. And posteriorly, it gives insertion of the trapezoid muscle. Posteriorly, trapezoid muscle, anteriorly, deltoid muscle. And on the inferior surface, on our conoid tubercle and our trapezoid ridge. Conoid tubercle, this trapezoid ridge, and this conoid tubercle. It gives attachment for the conoid and trapezoid parts of the coracoclavicular ligament. We already mentioned that before. Then we have the medial two-thirds of the shaft. Now, anteriorly to the medial two-thirds of the shaft, it gives origin to the pectoralis major muscle. So around this region, we have pectoralis major muscle. Then superiorly at the rough medial part, this region here, it gives origin for the clavicular head of the sternocleidomastoid. So sternocleidomastoid muscle. It also has an oval impression on the inferior surface that gives attachment for the costoclavicular ligament. So this oval impression is for costoclavicular ligament. Then we have the subclavian groove, which is found on the lateral half of the medial two-thirds of the shaft, and that gives insertion for the subclavius muscle. And surrounding the border of the subclavius muscle, if this is a groove for subclavius and an area surrounding that region is painted instead, then that region, what attached in that area is the clavipectoral fascia. So clavipectoral fascia, it encloses the subclavius muscle to go and insert at the margins of the subclavian groove. Do we get that? So it encloses subclavius muscle to go and insert at the margins of the subclavius groove. So if two areas are painted, a big circle and another paint within the circle, If you are asked for the color within the circle, probably within the circle was painted blue, then surrounding it was painted green, and you are asked for what is the structure painted blue. We should know that that is our subclavius muscle. However, the structure painted green, which is surrounding it, is known as the clavipectoral fascia. Then we also have that the posterior surface close to the medial end gives origin to the stenohyoid muscle. So the posterior surface of the medial two-third close to the medial end give origin for stenohyoid muscle. So stenohyoid muscle is here, pectoralis major, clavicular part of sternocleidomastoid, stenohyoid, deltoid, trapezoid, subclavius muscle, clavipectoral fascia, coracoclavicular ligament, the conoid part and the trapezoid part, and costoclavicular ligament. So this is basically all the attachment on the clavicle. So let's do a quick overview. On the lateral one third, anteriorly we have deltoid, posteriorly we have trapezoid. On the medial two third, anteriorly we have pec major, superiorly close to the medial end we have clavicular head of sternocleidomastoid. Then posteriorly we are also close to the medial end we now have stenohyoid muscle. Then on the inferior surfaces, lateral one third, on the inferior surface of lateral one third, we have coracoclavicular ligament, the conoid part and the trapezoid part. We have the subclavian groove for subclavius muscle. The margins of the subclavian groove give attachment for clavipectoral fascia. Then we have the oval impression for the costoclavicular ligaments. Surrounding the medial end are two ligaments. We have the fibrous capsule of sternoclavicular joint and we have the interclavicular ligament. So around the lateral or acromial end, we have a facet for the acromial process of the scapula and it forms the acromioclavicular joint, and the ligament related to that area is the joint capsule of the acromioclavicular joint. So that's basically all for the clavicle. Then the ossification of this bone, because the ossification for clavicle is very, very unique, and it has two primary ossification and two secondary ossification centers. The primary ossification centers are located in the shaft. The secondary ossification center, we can find them one for the medial end and one for the acromial end. Usually they ask this question in steeplechase that absent or improper development of this bone or this structure is referred to as cleidocranial diastasis. So if the clavicle is congenitally absent or doesn't develop properly, it is referred to as cleidocranial diastasis. And that's basically all for the clavicle. Thank you. Bye.